This week on Sultan Plays, painting Space Marines in less than 2 hours. Hey everyone, I'm Sam and this week we're talking about Space Marines. Jumping straight into it, you got to Zenith Prime your models after building them. That's a black base coat with a white spray from above. I use Grey Seer. Next I took an airbrush and used some contrast paint through it because I'm super lazy, but you can absolutely do this with a larger brush. I highly recommend doing it that way because it's nice and quick and it gets right into the recesses. After that, to build up some layers and highlights and definition, do some dry brushing. Go lighter and lighter with your colours as you move up, and as you go lighter with the colours, go lighter with the touch. That sounded a bit odd, but I'm keeping it. Now I'm doing Blood Angels, so here are the colours that I use, but you can just swap them out for blues or greens if you're doing Ultramarine, Salamanders, whatever. Next I block in all the base colours, blacks, metals, etc. The main thing about speed painting is you don't want to thin your paints too much. You don't want them gloopy and thick so that they don't adhere properly and they get all crumbly and horrible, but you don't want them so thin that you have to put on 5 or 6 layers. So I put a tiny bit of water in and then just slop it onto the model. You'll still get into the definition, you'll still make the model look pretty great, but you don't have to spend hours doing layers and layers and layers. This is not going to win Golden Demon, this is to get your models on the tabletop nice and quickly. With the metallics, I don't add any extra water other than what my wet palette puts on it. You don't usually use metallics with a wet palette, but I'm super lazy in keeping my paints in one place, so I put it on there. A little bit of extra moisture helps it go across the model nice and quickly, but also doesn't remove most of that pigment. This took about 2 coats, honestly, because GW metallics are quite thin. After that, some Xandri dust on parchment purity seals. It covers really nicely. And a top tip, if you have to do any yellow, start with Xandri dust. It gives it a good shade and it goes over really quickly. Using strong colours will really help you get the base coats down quickly. Screamer Pink, Xandri dust, stuff like that for purity seals is great. I then base coat my power weapons using Grey Seer, and this is a base layer ready for contrast paints. It actually takes longer than putting on the contrast paint itself. Once I have a nice opaque layer, I throw in some Achillean green, allowing it to roll into the recesses and give some nice natural shadows. These shadows will actually help me when it comes to highlighting the weapons, as it shows me where the light's going to fall and create some nice natural effects. While the power weapons were drying, I decided to go back to the eyes. I'd already put a slight dot of green in, and I decided to put a brighter dot just to give them a bit of a glow. Little effects like this don't take too long and really add to the overall effect of the models. Then it was time for shading. I threw Reikland Flesh Shade all over the gold to give it a nice warm effect, and Agrax all over the parchment and areas like that, with a bit of Nuln Oil naturally over the metal parts. Once that was done, I highlighted the black areas. This was nice and quick, a nice scratchy highlight with Eshin Grey. Don't go too bright with this because you'll draw attention away from other parts of the model. Going back to the power weapons, I took Thousand Suns Blue and went up through Ahriman Blue, Baharoth Blue, all that good stuff to give a nice effect. I kept this very minimal but made the highlights very sharp. You can see here on the sword I'm doing some dashes across to give it some bright effects, and this shows where the light is sheening off the blade. With this, honestly, less is more. The contrast paint has done tons for you. Across the claws, I do a nice dash from top to bottom, just to make it look like the light is winking off of it as they run. If you have the time and you're feeling confident, put a little bit of scratchy text in black on the parchment. Then I added some heraldry to this little tilting plate here. I decided to go with yellow and didn't follow my own advice of starting with Xandri dust, so this took 3 or 4 coats. With Xandri dust, it'll probably take 2. Then I based them. I'm not going to go into how I did the bases because I did a massive video last week on how I did my Thunderhawk base and it's exactly the same. So go check that out if you want to find out how. These models I've pinned into these bases so they can be used on the tabletop or in this massive base that I'm showing you now. You know, a bit of versatility. I've already put the effort in. I might as well be able to use them on both the table and as part of this cool diorama. There we go, they fit nicely on their bases and this big Thunderhawk one. So that's it, that was less than 2 hours to paint, admittedly 3 Blood Angels, but you could easily extend this to 5. Do they look the best? No. Are they perfect for tabletop? Absolutely. Just give them a quick spritz of varnish and they're good to go. Hope you enjoyed this video, I'll catch you next time.